There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't even show itself clearly. It sits in the background of your life like a shadow, quietly shaping the way you see yourself, the way you love, the way you trust, and the way you break. Carl Jung understood this shadow well. He believed that what we do not bring to consciousness controls our lives. And nowhere is that more true than in our relationship with our mother. The mother wound is not just about a difficult childhood. It's about the emotional inheritance you carry, the unspoken expectations, the guilt, the shame, the feeling that somehow you are never enough, no matter how hard you try. Think about your earliest emotional memories. Not just the events, but the feeling tone behind them. Did you feel safe, seen, heard? Or did you learn, silently, to contort yourself to be accepted? Maybe your mother was loving but distant. Maybe she was critical. Maybe she was inconsistent, offering affection only when you played a certain role, behaved a certain way, or sacrificed your needs. As a child, you couldn't process that kind of emotional complexity. So, like all children, you adapted. You molded yourself to survive, to stay attached, to feel loved, even if it meant betraying who you really were. That betrayal of self is the root of the mother wound. You may have become the good girl, the smart one, the overachiever, the peacemaker. Not because it felt authentic, but because it felt safe. Because somewhere deep down, a part of you believed, if I'm not perfect, I'll lose love. If I speak my truth, I'll be rejected. If I take up too much space, I'll be punished. And so, you learn to shrink, to silence your needs, to numb your feelings, to hide your anger, to apologize for existing. Fast forward to adulthood. Now you find yourself struggling with anxiety, burnout, perfectionism, codependency, or an aching sense of emptiness you can't explain. You chase success, but it never feels like enough. You crave love, but you don't trust anyone fully. You set goals, but self-sabotage the moment you get close. This isn't random. This is the unconscious acting out old survival patterns. Jung believed that the psyche is like a living organism, constantly pushing us toward wholeness. That means all the buried emotions, the sadness, the rage, the longing, they don't disappear. They wait, and they leak through your relationships, your self-talk, your nervous system. The mother wound shows up in subtle but devastating ways. You feel responsible for other people's emotions. You struggle to say no without guilt. You attract emotionally unavailable partners. You fear abandonment, even when you're loved. You downplay your accomplishments. You fear being too much or not enough. It's like carrying a quiet voice in your head that constantly questions your worth. And here's the hardest part. You may love your mother deeply. You may feel loyal to her. You may even feel ashamed for feeling hurt. That's normal. But healing doesn't mean blaming. Healing means seeing. Seeing the impact of what happened and what didn't. Seeing how the things you dismissed as normal were actually wounds. Seeing how you've been living inside a script you didn't write. The pain of the mother wound lives in the body. In the tension in your chest when you disappoint someone. In the lump in your throat when you try to speak your truth. In the tight smile you wear when you feel like screaming inside. It lives in your fear of taking up space. In your compulsion to be needed. In your quiet self-abandonment every time you choose peace over authenticity. And until you name it, it will run your life. Carl Jung wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." If your mother couldn't face her own pain, you may have unconsciously carried it for her. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to stop the cycle. You were never meant to become your mother's emotional caretaker. You were never meant to earn love by becoming someone else. You were never meant to shrink to be accepted. You were meant to be whole. You were meant to feel, to speak, to rest, to take up space without apologizing, to be loved without condition. The mother wound is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your awakening. You might think that what happened in childhood stays in childhood, but emotionally, that's rarely true. The truth is, the unresolved emotional patterns from your early bond with your mother follow you into adulthood, often in ways you don't even recognize. The mother wound isn't always caused by outright abuse or neglect. In many cases, it's formed in quiet moments, when your feelings were dismissed, when love felt conditional, when your boundaries were ignored. The wound lives not just in what was done to you, but in what you learned to do to yourself in order to survive. Most people carry these patterns without realizing it. They believe their anxiety, low self-worth, or relationship struggles are personal failures. But what they're really experiencing is the legacy of emotional survival strategies, adaptations they developed as children to stay emotionally attached, accepted, or safe. For example, if you grew up with a mother who was emotionally unavailable, you may now chase partners who are distant, not because it feels good, but because it feels familiar. Your nervous system has been wired to equate love with unpredictability or emotional absence. You may even feel anxious when someone is actually kind, consistent, or emotionally present, because deep down, it contradicts the love model you internalized early on. Or perhaps your mother was overly controlling, constantly correcting you, directing your life, or expecting you to fulfill her emotional needs. As an adult, you might feel paralyzed when making decisions, obsessively seek approval, or fear failure because you never developed a strong sense of inner authority. You learn to doubt your own intuition and defer to others, especially those who remind you of her. In many cases, the mother wound leads to perfectionism. You believe that if you do everything right, you'll finally be good enough. But that bar keeps moving. No achievement feels satisfying for long. You may also become emotionally self-sufficient to a fault, refusing to ask for help, fearing that needing others makes you weak or unlovable. This wound can even affect your career. You might choose a path based on what your mother valued, not what you truly desire. You may burn out trying to prove your worth through external success. Or you might self-sabotage when you get too close to your goals, because deep down you don't believe you deserve fulfillment. Jung emphasized that the unconscious mind shapes behavior more than we realize. And one of the most powerful unconscious forces is the inner child, the part of you that still lives in emotional survival mode, even if your external life looks stable. So what does healing actually look like? It begins with awareness. Naming the pattern is the first step. You must see how your adult struggles are rooted in early emotional dynamics. This doesn't mean blaming your mother, but it does require honesty about the impact of your experiences. It also means allowing yourself to feel what you once had to suppress. That might include grief for the love you didn't receive, anger over the ways you had to betray yourself, sadness for the years you spent trying to earn what should have been given freely. Healing also involves setting boundaries, not just with others, but internally. You must stop tolerating the inner voice that echoes your mother's criticism. You must unlearn the instinct to abandon your needs, to overextend yourself, or to apologize for your existence. One of the most important steps is learning how to reparent yourself. This means becoming the loving, attuned, and stable presence you needed when you were young. It means listening to your feelings without judgment, validating your experience, and allowing yourself to rest, play, and express freely, without fear of rejection. It's not easy. The mother wound runs deep. But every time you choose self-trust over approval, truth over silence, boundaries over guilt, you are healing. You're not becoming someone else. You're returning to who you were before you learned to hide. The mother wound is a hidden force that shapes much of your emotional life, and one of the most challenging realities is how it traps you in repetitive cycles. These patterns often play out without your full awareness, as if on autopilot. But to truly heal, you must first recognize these cycles and understand how they operate. Many people find themselves attracted to the same kind of relationships over and over, partners who are distant, unavailable, or critical. This isn't coincidence. It's an unconscious reenactment of early emotional dynamics with your mother. Your psyche seeks familiarity, even if that familiarity is painful. For example, if your mother was emotionally cold or unpredictable, your nervous system learned that love comes with distance or withdrawal. So as an adult, you may find yourself drawn to partners who withhold affection or who emotionally pull away, because this pattern feels oddly normal. It's familiar, even if it hurts. If your mother was controlling or overly critical, you might struggle with self-doubt or perfectionism. You may fear making mistakes, fear disappointing others, and question your every decision. You learn to depend on external validation because your inner voice was shaped by her criticisms. These patterns can infiltrate every aspect of your life: work, friendships, your relationship with yourself. You may work obsessively to prove your worth, burn out trying to meet impossible standards, or avoid conflict at all costs because you fear rejection or punishment. Breaking this cycle is difficult because it's tied to your identity. You may have internalized messages like, I am only lovable if I am perfect. My needs don't matter. If I speak up, I will be abandoned. I have to fix others to be worthy. These beliefs feel like facts because they were formed early and repeated often. They operate silently beneath your conscious thoughts, but dictate your feelings and behaviors. So how do you break free? First, you need radical honesty with yourself. This means observing your patterns without judgment, but with deep curiosity. When you notice yourself reacting with anxiety, people-pleasing, or self-criticism, pause and ask, what is really happening here? What old wound is being triggered? This awareness opens the door to choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you can begin to respond differently. For instance, when you feel the urge to say yes out of guilt, practice saying no and notice how it feels. When your inner critic speaks harshly, consciously replace that voice with one of kindness and understanding. Healing also requires new experiences that challenge old patterns. If your emotional history taught you that vulnerability is unsafe, you must find safe spaces where you can practice being vulnerable, whether it's with trusted friends, therapists, or support groups. Creating these new relational experiences rewires your nervous system. It teaches your brain that love can be consistent, acceptance unconditional, and safety real. Self-care becomes revolutionary in this context. Prioritizing your needs might feel selfish at first because you were conditioned to put others first or to minimize yourself. But setting boundaries, resting, and honoring your feelings are essential acts of reclaiming your power. Reconnecting with your inner child, the wounded part of you from early life, is crucial. This means giving yourself permission to feel the emotions you had to suppress. Grief for lost love, anger at unmet needs, sadness for the parts of you that felt invisible. You can nurture this inner child through simple practices like journaling your feelings, imagining comforting that young version of yourself, or speaking affirmations that counteract the old negative beliefs. Remember, this process is neither quick nor easy. You will encounter resistance from within yourself and sometimes from others who are uncomfortable with the changes you're making. You may feel guilt, confusion, or fear of losing relationships when you begin to stand up for yourself or change old habits. This is normal. The wound carries with it a loyalty that can feel like a chain. But every time you choose your healing over the familiar pain, you loosen that chain. You start to rewrite the story you tell yourself about love, worth, and identity. You begin to separate who you are from the old narratives written by your mother's limitations or wounds. This transformation is not only liberating for you, but also for those who come after you. By breaking the cycle of the mother wound, you end the unconscious transmission of pain and create a new legacy of healing, self-love, and authenticity. You are not alone on this journey. Many walk this path, and support is available from therapy, communities, books, and practices that honor the complexity of healing. The power to heal is already inside you. It's been there since the beginning, waiting for you to claim it. Healing the mother wound is not about erasing your past or pretending it didn't affect you. It's about embracing your full story, including the pain, and choosing to reclaim your life on your own terms. This journey requires courage because it means facing truths that may have been buried for years. It means sitting with uncomfortable emotions instead of pushing them away. It means challenging deep-seated beliefs that have kept you small and unseen. But it also offers profound freedom. When you begin to heal, you start to experience yourself differently. You notice moments when you no longer need approval to feel worthy. You find yourself setting boundaries without fear of abandonment. You start to say your truth, even when it's hard. You may discover new ways to love, both yourself and others, that don't rely on sacrifice or self-denial. You learn that love is not a transaction where you have to earn it. It is your birthright. Carl Jung taught that healing comes through integration, the process of bringing unconscious parts of ourselves into awareness, accepting them, and making them whole. The mother wound represents a fragment of your psyche that has been split off to protect you. By reclaiming it, you become more authentic, more complete. This is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Some days will be easier than others. There may be setbacks, but each step forward is a victory, a step toward freedom from old wounds. You are invited to cultivate compassion for yourself, to celebrate your resilience, your capacity to love despite pain, and your willingness to grow. By doing this inner work, you don't just heal yourself, you transform your relationship to your mother and to your own children, if you have them. You break the unconscious cycle of emotional pain that too often passes from generation to generation. This is how healing becomes revolutionary. It is how you become whole. And when you face the truth about your mother, not to blame, but to understand and to reclaim your power, you open the door to true freedom. You will never fully heal until you face this. But once you do, everything changes. Because healing the mother wound is not just about your past. It is about your future. It is about the life you are meant to live, free, whole, and deeply loved.